emergence. It's also our theme for the year. So if you were part of the Burning Bowl, that you know that we talked a little bit about that. And so this month, one of the things that we're exploring, or we like to do at the beginning of each year, is to sort of go back to some of the basics. And to see what new emerges as we continue to bring ourselves back to some of the basics of science of mind and our spiritual teaching. And of course, every time we do that, right, we get deepened, and hopefully some new awareness emerges as well. And so, yes, our topic for today is, if it's not God, what is it? Well, we might ask ourselves the first question, why might it not be God? So this is something that I notice as we move into this new thought, into these spiritual teachings and into the science of mind, is that we have a lot of baggage around the term God, don't we? Right? Some of us love it, some of us hate it, some of us are indifferent to it, some of us wonder why are we still using that old archaic word. Some of us have very clear ideas about what that means. Others of us have very pre-critical images from our childhood that comes up every time we see that word or hear that word. No matter how much spiritual work we've done, we might still see a white, long-bearded guy on a cloud somewhere, even though we know better, right? That can flash through our brain without us realizing it when we use the term God. And so we have to grapple with it. The problem with the word God is that it's, to a certain extent, the biggest word we have, and it's the biggest word we know for this thing, which is both a transcendent mystery and an indwelling presence. So it's both that which is the macrocosmic infinite reality, which is creating all of life, and it is also life as it is living itself in, through, and as each one of us and all of creation. Right? It's both transcendent and incarnated. It is both that which is the mystery of life, but also immanent and personal and indwelling. And so we have to really grapple with this word God. And more importantly, we have to grapple with, what do we actually think, feel, and believe about the nature of this, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, whatever we mean by it, by this particular word. And so we might just start out with, at the moment, just inviting you here in the sanctuary, those of you online, to take a moment and to, when I first said the word God, right, or I say it again now, just notice what comes up for you. Just be aware. Even if you know, even if you've studied something different or something new, maybe what comes up is exactly that. Maybe there's still some vestiges of something different. The first thing we want to do is to notice that. The second thing we want to do is to take an opportunity to explore, what is this word supposed to be pointing to? Right? There's the beautiful Buddhist saying, we always have the finger pointing at the moon. That's the word God. Please don't get overly obsessed with the finger. Pay attention to the moon. What are we pointing to with that word? So I have come to try to engage with that word like it's a glyph. You know what a glyph is? It's a symbol that represents something, like the symbol that represents the artist formerly known as Prince. We have to use all those words to describe that symbol. right? But if you see that symbol, you know what that symbol is referring to, or quite frankly, who that symbol is referring to. It's funny when I like to read a lot of fantasy, magic and fantasy novels, and so oftentimes they have very strange names. And what I notice is that when I talk to somebody about it, I learned this years and years ago when I first started talking to people about the Lord of the Rings, and they would start saying the names of characters, and I'd be like, who? And I realized that I had never actually pronounced the word to myself in my own mind. I had just made it into a glyph, right? That word meant that character. That glyph that looked like that meant that character. And I had never actually tried to pronounce it within my own mind because I didn't know how it was supposed to be pronounced. And so when I heard somebody else pronounce it, I was like, I don't know who you're talking about, even though, of course, I had read the books a million times and knew the story by heart. So that's what it means to have a glyph. And if we can begin to allow that word to release all of the trappings and perhaps all of the baggage that came along with it, right, we might begin to explore it in a different way. This unknowable, immeasurable, infinite, and eternal reality. Right, all the mystics have reminded us that it is a mystery, which is the source of all life and out of which everything is made. The unknowable, immeasurable, infinite, and eternal reality, which is the source of all life and out of which everything is made. And is that word big enough? Can we find a way where we can make sense of or feel or comprehend something about this unknowable, immeasurable, infinite, and eternal reality? So I love this quote from Ernest Holmes from The Science of Mind. The reality of philosophy, the principle of science, and the God of religion all have much the same meaning: the nature of the universe in which we live. So ultimately, the study of the science of mind and the study of our spirituality is to grapple with what do we believe is the nature of the universe in which we live. And this is what all of the thinkers in every tradition, spiritual tradition, in every philosophy, and in science is all trying to make sense of from a somewhat slightly different point of view. The philosopher is asking what is going on. The scientist is asking how did it get here? And the religion is asking, why is it all here? Do you see? It's the same question, the nature of the universe, from slightly different perspectives. And in the science of mind, we define the science of mind as the correlation of the revelations of religion, the opinions of philosophy, the laws of science, applied to the aspirations and needs of humankind. Because we seek to recognize that no one of those avenues actually answers the question in its entirety. Not one of those avenues answers the question in its entirety. And so much of it, particularly from religion and spirituality, is burdened by a religious dogma and ancient cultural trappings that no longer really fit in our modern world today. Although there are some really important values and some really important experiences that are left behind when we lose the mythos and the deep embedded experience of spirituality that comes from the pre-science point of view. The questions about God are about origins and about endings and about the nature of reality, which is basically everything in between. Which is why we read in so many spiritual traditions that God is the Alpha and the Omega. The problem is, in my way of thinking, is that so many spiritual traditions speak about the Alpha and Omega, but forget to speak about the in-between. Philosophy and science are overly focused on the in-between and sometimes forget to think about the Alpha and the Omega. Dr. Tracy Brown has turned us on to a fabulous book in which she has a poem, and it's called, and I didn't write down the name of the book, The Bouquet of Stars, is that correct? The Bouquet of Stars by Shalane Harkin. And she has this poem, Every Luminous Thing. May you remember, you and every luminous thing share an origin story. May you remember, you and every luminous thing share an origin story. God, or whatever that unknowable, unnameable, ineffable, eternal, infinite reality is. So there is that within us innately that seeks to answer these questions. And what we want to do in our sacred study of the science of mind, of life, of philosophy, of psychology, all the ways in which we grapple with our own lives, is to remember that part of what we're doing is embedded in this larger conversation. It isn't just only about how to manifest or how to apply it in our lives. There is a deep and profound impact on the way in which we walk around in the world by the way in which we answer these questions. And if we do not grapple with how we answer these questions, we are unconscious to thoughts and beliefs that are operating in the background. And so this is why we engage in the philosophy or the theory, or if we are thinking of ourselves as a religion, in the theology. This is why sacred study becomes important. Because we don't realize how much the way in which we answer these questions is the ground in which we live and from which we operate. We are constantly engaged with the question, what or who is the creator? What is creation? And how do the two relate? What is the creative process? And there are many, many different ways in which this has been answered, right? There's lots of different ways in which that has been answered. If you look into the early scientific revolution, as we were disembedding ourselves from the legends and mythologies that no longer carried the same sense of reality for people, right? All of a sudden, God became a master clockworker that wound up the universe and then left it on its own and simply retreated into something beyond that or outside of that. And we were left with a mechanical, random universe. There are lots of different ways in which we've answered this question. The Hopis speak of the mother tortoise who rises out of the sea and who births the first humans. And as they emerge from her shell and live on her back, she brings them to land so that they may flourish on the earth. Many, many stories from all over that seek to answer the question, what is the creator? What is creation? And how are the two related? How is this creative process happening? Ultimately, the science of mind would say what we're trying to describe is the nature of life. The nature of life, the nature of reality, tangible and intangible, absolute and relative, all of reality, all of the impulse of life as well as the way in which it's expressing itself. So in the science of mind, we understand that there's a golden thread that everybody is working with. Everybody is trying to answer these questions. And in all of the religion, science, and philosophy, we can find some deep similarities. It's called the perennial philosophy or the golden thread. And it's different ways of speaking about the same thing, that there is one infinite reality, that love is important, that the way in which we engage with each other matters. There are deep truths that run through, that everybody is articulating in their own way. I've always thought about this as if you think about this transcendent mystery, which is an infinite, eternal reality, right? That's like enormous. That's enormous. It's so big that no one explanation is going to actually encompass it all. And so we can think of each of these ideas or ways of describing it. We can think of them as somebody standing and looking at one side of the mountain or one particular view of the mountain. And maybe one side of the mountain is just a sheer cliff. And so if you were to climb that mountain, you would learn about rock climbing and pitons and how to do the ropes and what you have to wear, right? And you would learn about, your guides would tell you about those kinds of things. But if you're standing on another side of a mountain, which actually is a long, slow, beautiful, gradual slope through forests and into the subalpine forests and then into the alpine meadows, you would have an entirely different guide, and you would learn about how to hike and maybe how to walk through the ridges, and you might learn how to name the plants or the trees or the flowers, and you would have potentially an entirely different experience. Do you see? But when you reach the top, you would both be standing at the top of the same mountain. And so in the science of mind, we recognize that there are many ways to describe this, not only what it is and how it works, but also our journey of discovering of it. We have a particular map and a particular way of describing it. The other thing that we can look at is how many words there are actually to substitute for the word God. In Islam, there are 99 names for God, the merciful and the benevolent, and many, many names. In the Science of Mind, just in the first 4 chapters that we're reading now in the Science of Mind class, just in the first 4 chapters, there are 102. I know, because I helped make the list that CSL is now using. Right? And they describe different qualities and different aspects of this infinite reality, right? Because it is so big, one word just doesn't do it justice, especially if that one word is burdened by an image or an idea, like a guy with a white beard, a white guy with a white beard standing on a white cloud with maybe a judgment book. At least that's what it looked like when I was a kid. So Ernest Holmes begins to unpack all of this, and he uses a terribly, terribly, terribly esoteric and very technical language. He calls it the thing itself. The thing itself, it comes from the German word ursprünglich Dinge, the original things. The original things, that out of which everything is made. That origin, right? That what is the impulse and how does that move into all of life? Now, we can't know all there is to know about the thing itself, but there is much we can explore, discover, and experience, and never despair that you cannot comprehend or touch or have a deep experience of the thing itself. You can. Why? Because you are it, manifesting as you. There's no gap. There's nothing that you have to bridge. The thing itself is present right here, right now. in your life, in your heart, in your being, in all of creation, in all that is seen and unseen, in all that is visible and all that is invisible, right? That's what it means to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, everywhere present. So, what words do you like to use? If I were to say to you, for this coming week, you're not allowed to use the word God. Don't use it. Don't use it in your spiritual mind treatments. Don't use it in your conversations. Struggle with, what aspect of this infinite reality are you actually talking about? Are you talking about the love? Are you talking about the law? Are you talking about the quality of beauty or joy? Or are you talking about the principles, that principles not bound by precedent, that which moves is also that which is created? Do you see? It's so big to think that any one word would encompass it is to do an injustice to this transcendent mystery, is to try to put it in a box. No word is big enough. But there are many, many words that we can use to get a hold of the various aspects of the one that we are seeking to explore, understand, discover, relate to, experience, express, work with in our spiritual practices. Many, many different words. And so a powerful part of our sacred practice and our sacred study is to deny ourselves the shortcut of using the word God. You will discover that if you do this, that you will have to grapple with what aspect of this infinite mystery am I actually relating to in the moment, seeking to be about. You might think about, as you leave here today, your 2 favorite words or 3 that really get a hold of different aspects of this one infinite reality. Qualities or principles that really speak to you. And ask yourself, why these words? What is it about those words? Mine over the years have changed. I've even noticed that in my spiritual mind treatment, the words that I use for this infinite mystery, they change, not just according to the spiritual mind treatment that I'm doing, but also as my spirituality has matured and grown, and different things are on my own personal horizon. Different words begin to have texture and meaning and weight and flavor to them. Don't deny yourself the value of playing with these words. Roll them around in your mouth. Roll them around in your consciousness. Roll them around in your heart. What opens? What expands? What increases? What illuminates or reveals something to you? So what are your favorite words to use instead of God? This is the question I invite you to spend time with this week. I love this quote. God, I have to pull it up over here because I can't read it over there. I don't even think I can see it with my glasses. Let's see. See? Okay, we're going to try it. God, the divine or universal life principle, or whatever we choose to call it, is an original, uncreated, changeless being. Not a being with parts, but being with potentialities. So this is the thing, right? Science of mind is not a theology where there's no theos. We don't have a deity. Because a deity applies a being with parts, right? Arms and legs, or an idea, or whatever, however we might describe that. It's neither father nor mother. It's beingness. It's being in its absolute state, this divine universal reality, this infinite reality that is moving, that is creator, creative process, and creation. All three of these things. I love this statement from Ernest Holmes. We're going to parse it out here for a minute. There is a universal mind, and you know, if you've been following with me on the Science of Mind class, we're starting to translate that word mind into consciousness. Mind feels like just way too cerebral, and we misunderstand what the science of mind is doing with that word. And they didn't really have the word consciousness back when the New Thought writers were writing in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Consciousness just wasn't as big a deal. Consciousness didn't really break onto the stage until 1893 when the speakers from the East came to the First World Parliament of Religions. And an entirely new idea about life and about spirituality was brought to the Western sensibility. And so consciousness has grown from that point. So when you read in the Science of Mind, universal mind, you might translate it into universal consciousness, spirit, intelligence, that is the origin of everything. The origin of everything, consciousness, spirit, intelligence, the know-how to create, to become creation, the spirit, which is the life that animates it, and the consciousness, that is the awareness, the ground of being from which all things spring, which means that it's first cause. That's what it means to say it's the origin. It's first cause, not just in the beginning, but all the time. First cause that is unrelated to something that is an experience, that's first cause. Unrelated to the human condition or the space-time continuum. And it's happening all the time. It's not just in the beginning, it's not just the Big Bang, right? It's what we touch in our spiritual mind treatments when we are working with the thing itself. And we call it God. We call it this word for lack of a word that is big enough. This universal life and energy finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives. In and through all that is energized and all that is lived. So creation is not left out of this larger reality. Creation is absolutely the hands and feet and eyes and heart and mind and expression of this infinite being. Being in potentiality is the absolute. Creation is the expression of that. The outpicturing, the actualization of the potential in its myriad, infinitely diverse ways and forms, right? It's an infinite reality, so it has to have an infinite number of different ways to express itself. It's hard to bend our minds around, but this infiniteness and the fact that it's a oneness, it's a wholeness. We don't separate in the science of mind. When we use the term God, we mean creation as well. Let me say that again, because I know this is a big shift from Eastern and Western traditions. When we say the word God, we include creation. This is the manifest body, the place where the infinite is expressing itself and is just as necessary and important as are the infinite qualities. It's hard to bend our mind around this, but we can experience oneness. We can touch it and recognize it, absolutely, beyond the shadow of a doubt. And I know that you've done it. I know you've had these experiences in meditation, in hiking, in gazing into the eyes of a newborn or into your beloved. You've had the experience when the barriers have melted away and you have expanded into that which is larger. And you have discovered that you are bigger on the inside than this finite form. Each time you have touched that universal reality. And the reason that we can touch it is because we are it expressing itself now, individualized. This is what Jesus meant when he said, these are the living waters, when we drink from the cup of oneness. This is what the Buddha meant when he said in meditation, and you taste the sweet nectar in the back of your throat. And you are nourished by it. Everything is included. Nothing is left out. That includes you and me. All of it. No boundaries. No places where one stops and the other starts. There is one life back of everything that lives. There is one energy back of all that is energized. This energy is everything, in everything as everything. There's one spirit back of all expression, written in the science of mind. I think that's my favorite thing about the science of mind. Truly, honest to God. You're sitting right now with God, in God, as God. Every time you see the sun rise or set, flower bloom, child smile. We don't seek to transcend this life. We seek to universalize it. We don't seek to get out of this life. We seek to transform it. We're not looking for heaven. We're bringing heaven here. That's what we do. That's how important and necessary you are. Because you're a place where the universe is waking up to itself. You're a place where nature gets to enjoy its own beauty. Who but self-aware beings, obviously not just human beings, but who but self-aware beings can look at a sunset and want to applaud God? The tree just lives it. The bear is just eating the berries. But the beings that are self-aware, wherever they are in the cosmos and the galaxies or on our planet, this is how nature actually gets to enjoy herself. And the life that is that transcendent mystery gets to express itself and see itself in expression, emerging as your life, as my life, as the gifts we bring and the love that we share, the things that we do, the ways in which we seek to align ourselves with that source which is flowing through us. And what is that source? Why does it flow? Here is the question. Why does being become? Why does the Creator even want a creation? Who cares? What is the point, right? Why does this happen? Why do miraculous little things like this beautiful frog actually even exist? To express life. To express that infinite mystery in all of its beauty and glory and wonder and grandeur and majesty and intimate experiences and expressions, so that it can express and experience itself. So the impulse of Creator into creation, love. Love is the self-givingness of spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. This thing itself is both source and supply. It is sufficient to all of our needs. It is forever flowing in, through, and as us. It has already given everything. And because we are waking up as self-aware beings, it is now our turn. It's our turn to pay attention to how we are taking up the mantle of love, of creator and creation, because that life is now dwelling within us. We are the place where nature is sensing her own beauty, where life is knowing its own joy, where presence is becoming aware of itself, and where love is actualized in actions. So I'd like to close with this from, it's a little less known poem by Uriah Mountain Dreamer, and it's entitled The Call. I've heard it all my life, a voice calling a name I recognized as my own. Sometimes it comes as a soft-bellied whisper. Sometimes it holds an edge of urgency, but always it says, "Wake up, my love. You are walking asleep. There is no safety in that. Remember what you are, and let a deeper knowing color the shape of your humanness. There is nowhere to go. What you are looking for is right here. Open the fist clenched in wanting and see what you already hold in your hand. There is no waiting for something to happen, no point in the future to get to. All you have ever longed for is here in this moment, right now. You are wearing yourself out with all this searching. Come home and rest. How much longer can you live like this? Your hungry spirit is gaunt, your heart stumbles, all this trying. Give it up. Let yourself be one of the God-mad, faithful only to the beauty you are. Let the lover pull you to your feet and to hold you close. Dancing even when fear urges you to sit this one out. Remember, there is one word you were born to say with your whole being. And when it finds you, give your life to it. Don't be tight-lipped and stingy. Spend yourself completely on its saying. Be one word in this great love poem we are writing together. So it is.